Right. Hello, and thank you for joining us with our GrowVC podcast this week. The main topic today is funding and how to acquire funding, and we'll take a startup's perspective in this discussion. I'm Marcus, and I'm joined today by GrowVC founders Jouko Ahvenainen and Valto Loikkanen. So, let's start by introducing this week's GrowVC member highlight, and that's Ear Android. And I found the punchline for this particular startup very, very catchy, so I'll read that one. And the punchline goes, "Did your mobile phone ever ring in a library, class, or cinema? With the Ear Android application, such annoyances will never happen again." That kind of sums up the main product of this Ear project. So, the team behind the Ear Android have created an application that utilizes environmental sensors, such as location-based technology, and then determines the phone ringer profiles accordingly. So say you walk into a library or a church, and you predetermine the location of these places, then you could walk in and the phone would turn itself on silent, or the ringers off totally. Combined with many customizable functions and settings, this application is quite clever indeed. So, initial reactions. What thoughts come to mind, Jouko?
Yeah, I think that this is very useful application, that at least I feel that I need something like that. That there are many situations like when I walk on the street, that it is very difficult to notice when my phone is ringing. And on the other, if I put a ringing tone so high volume that it's enough on the streets, it's very loud inside. So that in that way I see that the application is very useful. And I think that there are a lot of people who are interested to use something like that. I think that the main question is to make it so easy and also enable it to learn in that way that that you don't have to adjust it all the time, but after some time it is really very automated application to adjust all these things. So that as a summary, I would say that the application as such sounds good. Then another question is that how to make a mobile application business. And I think that it is in that way that you must always start with one application, but if you want to build long-term business and successful company, one application is not enough. You need much more applications and you must expand your business. As it has been said many times that it is a little bit like music business, that if you make a song, it might be a hit, but with one song you cannot yet start a record label.
I think that's a very, very, very good metaphor for this. But continuing on, what are your thoughts on this, Valto?
Yeah, I like the actual feature or business model, or actually I don't know what the business model behind it is, but I like the application, and it's in that hot segment, location-based businesses. So in that sense, I think it's very interesting. The question is whether the feature itself is too small, or the application is too small. What else can be built around that? Because like companies like Foursquare or Gowalla that are now the hot names in kind of this location-based business models with their applications are already well funded and are rapidly expanding, and also those are even considered whether those are just features for something that Facebook could implement and things like that. So I think the application itself is good, and if the team is good, then there it's definitely in a hot segment to see if what else could be developed around that. Also, the idea for kind of how to get these settings for different locations. I think that there could be room for some kind of crowdsourcing models where different people could kind of share or do settings for different locations, and then other people could vote. Let's say it needs 10 votes to be active for everyone, and then you can just set your phone that okay, use settings that other people have provided, and so then when you walk in places it checks whether there is settings available and uses those automatically. It actually reminds a bit something like the automatic time zone change on your phone. When you fly to a new city, you can have your phone set so that it takes the time zone from that. But then it's a question whether actually you like to have that feature automated. Do you remember when you look at the time that whether it's your home time or the new time if it's set automatically? So but all in all, I think the segment is very interesting, and the application is already something that solves a problem. So in that sense, it's a very interesting company.
Yeah, I think that this crowdsourcing is very good idea for this, because my first reaction was that how long time it takes that I can teach my phone to all different places and locations. But if there could be that kind of component, I think that it could make it much more useful.
Yes, I think that the team behind the EAR project will get a good pointer there from the crowdsourcing component, something that they can surely try to figure out and develop somehow into the solution. But you can find more information on the EAR project in the GrowVC community or on their homepage at ear-project.com. And they've actually written a post on our Startup Stories blog on the EAR project that you check out on www.startup-stories.com. So now we could move on to the main discussion point for today, and that's the very broad subject of funding and how to get your startup funded. And I thought we could start with a simple and small question to Valto. So tell us, how does a startup get funded?
Yeah, that is a simple question indeed. Well, it's one again. We have a very broad question and definitely not simple, really. So there's obviously multiple things related to this, and one we also in our last podcast we talked a lot about the credibility and kind of how do you build the credibility from towards investors and such, and we talked about setting a big target and then in between milestones clearly, and then start walking that path and achieving those business goals, even if the actual business model would change, but kind of building up the business, and the more you achieve those milestones, the more interesting you start to look for the investors. But the minimum requirement obviously is that they know that you exist and are following your steps. But more about that is in our last podcast. So maybe Jouko, you could comment on this topic a bit further.
Yeah, I think the steps are really that of course first you must have idea what you are doing and how you are going to make the money, and also why you need money and how you are going to use it. When you have that idea yourself, I think that the next step is that you prepare a kind of pitch to investors. And it doesn't have to be a long Word document. It can be really the summary. Who are you? What are you doing? How you are different? And what are your plans? And then basically you can start with that, and first you must get enough